Sierra Software Tutorials. User Interface. In this video, we will present the user interface of Stitch Era Liberty. Hotfix Era and Embroidery Office users will find that the interface is almost identical, although we will find some different options in certain menus, toolbars, and views. When it starts, the software shows the File menu, which contains commands to manage our design files and to access the Application Settings box. The menu, located at the left edge of the window, contains the Open and Options groups enabled. When a design is loaded, the Save, Information and Print groups will be enabled. The Open group contains the subgroups Create a New Document, Open and Import. The window also contains a list of recent documents. The Upper group contains commands for creating a blank design, creating a design using a wizard, and a list of templates with presets for new designs. This wizard will guide us through the creation of a new, blank design, but presetting some information, such as author data, classification, fabric, color palette, threads, hoop, etc. In the Open subgroup, we have the command to load existing designs. In the Import subgroup, we will find commands to start a new design with an artwork, raster, or vector file, as a reference. There is also a command to open existing embroidery design files, usually called expanded designs, or designs in machine format. Let's briefly interrupt the sequence we are following to see how the File menu looks when we have a design loaded. The Save group contains a subgroup with commands to save the design, either with the same or another name. There is also a subgroup called Export, where we find commands to save the images that our design may contain. We also have a command to export the stitch information in formats compatible with almost all embroidery machines on the market. Within the Information group, we have commands to display technical information of the design and to share them through social networks or by email. If we have the optional pricing plugin, the Production Calculation subgroup will be enabled. Using these commands, we will have access to the production timing and pricing tools. The Print group contains commands for printing the design in different formats, some suitable for marketing presentations and others for production documentation. Finally, the Options group allows us to access the System Settings box, where we can adjust functional and visual options of the product. Also, we have access to the Customize Shortcuts box, where we can choose keys or combinations of keys to quickly access the most frequently used commands. Let's go back to the main sequence of our tutorial, where we don't have any design loaded yet, and load one of the sample designs included with the product to explore the user interface. We use the Open command. By default, it shows the folder where the installer stored the sample designs. All commands related to the handling of our design files will remember, even between sessions, the last folder used, whether when opening, saving, exporting, etc. Let us select a design and press OK. The system will load the design and displays it in the work area. We will open a view called Object Manager from the tabs on the right, as this is probably the most common workspace layout. We will come back to this view in more detail in a few minutes. The main area of the screen is our workspace. All of our creation and editing work will be done here. There are some visual tools in the workspace, such as a ruler at the top and left edges. We can change the units of the ruler and calibrate it to exactly match our display. These controls are shown by clicking in the upper left corner. At the top of our screen, we have the tool tabs. Tool tags are a huge set of tools organized on tabs. Some tool tabs are always visible and available, while other tool tabs are visible only if they may be required according to the activity on progress. Within the tool tabs, the tools are organized functionally in groups. Some commands are direct and others display a menu with more options. And certain controls in the tool tabs allow us to view and change the value of some parameters and properties. The Home tool tab contains functions to start and open designs, general tools related to the design document, like undo, redo, clipboard control, hoop selection, and import and export commands, among others. Inside the Artwork tool tab, we have functions related to images, raster, and vector, including open and save. It also includes functions to insert new graphics objects into the design document. The Embroidery tool tab is the starting point to digitize embroidery objects. It contains most of the functions we will use to create, edit, and finishing our embroidery designs. If we have the optional Hotfix plugin installed, a Bling tool tab with similar functions will be also visible, and it will be the starting point to digitize Bling objects. The View tool tab contains many functions related to the view options like zoom, simulation, grids, etc. Among other features, these functions controls how the design is displayed in the workspace. We also have functions that allow us to show and hide some elements of the workspace, such as the rulers, the scroll bars, and the auto-scroll area. A thin gray area surrounding the workspace where clicking starts an automatic scrolling of the design. We also have the snap controls, which allow us to force the position of the mouse pointer to fixed points. Snaps are very useful when trying to create objects with precise geometries. The Synchronized Windows group allows us to open auxiliary graphical views of our design. The Satellite view always shows the entire design and indicates with a rectangle the portion of the design that is visible in the workspace. For example, let's take the Zoom Window tool and define the area we want to see by clicking and dragging. In the workspace, we now see the defined area, and the satellite view shows a small rectangle indicating the portion of the design we are viewing. We can move the rectangle in the satellite view by clicking inside it and dragging, and the workspace will update to show the new region. We can even define a new area from the satellite view by clicking outside the rectangle and dragging. This view is very useful to closely explore our design in the final stages of creation. The Simulation view is a floating window that shows a realistic simulation of the design. Since the simulation window is separate from the workspace but synchronized with the active design, we can keep this window open while creating or editing the design in the workspace and see the changes reflected in this window immediately. Finally, inside the Help tool tab, we have functions related to the software license, the registered user, and links to learning resources and technical support. This small button on the right allows us to collapse the tool tabs. They will open when we click on the titles. By clicking on the pin, we can reset it so that it always remains visible. Below the tool tabs, we have the main toolbar. It provides quick access to the most commonly used functions. Catalogs is a tool that allows us to insert in the current design other designs stored on disk, images, motifs, etc. Create Object is a group that contains the tools we need to build our designs. The options available will depend on the product level and the optional plugins installed. Edit object contains a set of tools to select objects from our design and then edit them. After the selection, we can edit the shape of the objects graphically in the workspace and their properties using the Tool tabs or the Object Manager. In Edit Stitches we find tools to select a stitch or a set of stitches. Once the selection is complete, we can edit the stitch or manipulate the group as a block. This group contains the tools we will use to control the workspace in view mode, simulation, simulation with auxiliary objects, such as reference images, and normal mode. We also have almost all the zoom options. However, if our mouse has a wheel, we have the zoom in and out tool always available. Simply place the pointer on any point of the design, and move the wheel. The view will zoom promptly. The pan function, to move the viewpoint of the design, is available on the toolbar and also on the middle mouse button. An alternative way to pan is to place the mouse pointer over the rulers and drag. Some of the tools work as a mode, such as the pan tool. When activated, the system remains in pan mode until you press the escape key or open the context menu with right-click and select Cancel. The tools to activate the visual aids, such as the grid and reference lines, are also here. We can access the grid settings, select its appearance, color, and size, and then display it. Guidelines are reference elements that we can place and adjust at our convenience. We can activate guidelines, open the editor, and add a line, selecting the style, color, and position. We can also add and manipulate guidelines graphically. By placing the mouse over the ruler, holding down the Control key, and dragging, we create a guideline. We can move it by dragging this symbol, and using the context menu, right-click, we can change the color and delete them. Within the Show functions, we find controls that allow us to show and hide certain elements of our objects. In complex designs, with several partially overlapping objects, it is often useful to hide stitches, needle marks, outlines, etc. Towards the end of the toolbar is the Layers Visualization group. Stitch Era is a multi-decoration software, and in the same design there can be embroidery objects, reference, or print images, objects for cutting on vinyl, or fabric for applique and bling objects. Each control handles the visibility of objects of a different type of decoration. For example, if we hide the embroidery objects we will see the image, and if we hide the image, we will see only the embroidery objects. Usually the reference images are larger than the design you are creating, and when you click on them they are selected for editing. To avoid this, we can lock the layer where auxiliary objects are and they will remain visible, but not selectable. Below the main toolbar we have the Documents tabs. This application supports multiple documents, that is, we can work with multiple documents at the same time. Each document is in a separate space that we can activate through the Document tabs. The document that we see in the workspace is the active document, or active design. Let's load some designs to see how they work. We will use the Open command from the Home Tool tab. Click Open Design, select this design and click OK. We see that a new tab has appeared, with the design loaded. One more, but this time, we will load an expanded design, in machine format. Click on File menu, and within the Import subgroup, we will select Embroidery Machine Design. In my C disk, I have a folder with designs in machine format. This one is a DST design file, a popular machine format created by Taijima. Click to select it and press OK. Again, a new document tab appeared with the design loaded. We just need to click on the tab to make the design active or work with it. We can change the tab's order by dragging them. And using the context menu, we have commands to close the document, rename it, change the tab color, etc. We can also create a new, blank document by clicking on the small gray tab. On the left side of the window, we find the palettes and their associated commands. If we are working with vector artwork objects, the application displays the color palette, and if we are working with embroidery objects, it displays the thread palette. If we have installed the optional hotfix plugin, the beads palette appears when we work with objects of that type of decoration. In the color palette for vector type objects, we find commands to edit the palette, load, and save it to disk, etc., and controls that show us the current fill, border, and workspace background colors. We can use these controls to adjust these colors also, just clicking on them. To select a new fill color, we just click on it, and to select a border color, right-click on it. The palette for embroidery objects is similar in appearance to the color palette, but has important differences. More than a palette of colors, it is a palette of threads, each one with its own color, brand, code, etc. Each color has a number assigned. In multi-needle embroidery machines, this number corresponds to a needle. If we thread the needles of the machine with the colors indicated in the palette, we will get an embroidery with its colors, as we see in the workspace. To edit the palette, we click on the second button of the vertical toolbar. Then we access to a box where we can define, for each needle, the color of the thread associated with it. We can assign an arbitrary color using the RGB color tab and then search for that color in a commercial thread chart. To do this, we use the Thread Charts tab, select a commercial thread chart, and use the match function. This command will search the selected chart for the nearest color and assign it to the selected needle. We can also assign threads to the whole palette at the same time, using the Associate All command. When associating a thread from a commercial chart, the code, the brand, and the line will appear in the list. Of course, we can also associate a specific thread code by selecting the chart and the code and pressing Set, or by double-clicking on it. The button below the palette indicates the active needle and its color. If we create an embroidery object, that needle will be used. Below it, we have a control to adjust the background color of the workspace or assign a fabric as background. The background fabrics will be visible only in simulation views. We can adjust the color intensity of the workspace by placing the mouse pointer over the control and moving the mouse wheel. Several actions are available on the thread bar. When we place the pointer over the elements for a moment, information about the thread and its approximate consumption in the design is displayed. The small marks to the left of each element indicate that there are objects in the design that use that needle. By clicking, we set that needle as active, and by right-clicking, we hide the objects that use that needle. The thread palette, with all associated information, is stored within the design, but we can save palettes to disk to use them in other designs. We can also set a palette as the default palette for new designs. On the right side of the window, we find tabs that display important views and tools. We have opened one of them at the beginning of this tutorial, the Object Manager. The Object Manager contains two panels, the Document Map and the Object Inspector. The Document Map is a list of all objects, of all types, we have in our design. It is not just a static list, There are many actions available in this view, which is synchronized with the design. When we select an object in the document map, it is selected in the workspace, and vice versa. Similarly, changes made in either view will be reflected in the other. We can filter the list by element type, auxiliary, embroidery, etc., or show all types. The icons above each section operate in the same way as the layer display controls, allowing us to hide, show, lock, and unlock objects of each type. When working with embroidery designs, the sequence of objects is very important, especially when objects partially overlapped. For example, this is object number 2 in the list and this is object number 118, so, in the machine, it will be stitched much later than the object number 2. Since the two are overlapped, it will result in object 118 being stitched on top of number 2. The objects are listed in the order in which they were created, but we can modify this sequence if necessary by dragging the objects in the list. We can also select several objects and group them together. Below the document map, we have the Object Inspector. It lists all the properties of the selected object, and it allowed us to modify them, seeing the effect on the workspace immediately. For example, we select this object. Its properties are listed in the Object Inspector. We modify the stitch density, and we see how the workspace is updated according to this change. The Object Inspector has two view modes, a detail mode and a list mode. By dragging it from the top bar, it can be set as a floating window, and using the button in the upper right corner, it docks back to the panel. At the bottom edge of the window is the stick navigation bar. It shows the stitch sequence of the design, represented along a bar. By dragging the cursor, we can navigate through the sequence, simulating how the design will be produced on the machine. The control at the end of the bar allows us to adjust how transparent objects that have not yet been navigated will appear in the workspace. We can also select a drawing speed and use the play and pause control to get an automatic playback of the sequence. Pressing the button at the left of the bar displays controls that allow us to navigate every 10 or 100 stitches and between notable points such as machine commands, color changes, objects, etc. Below the stitch navigation we have the status bar, with basic general design information, such as the stitch count, colors, color changes, pointer position, and current activity. On the far right, we also have a direct zoom control. In the online help, available from the Help tool tab or by pressing F1 on the workspace, we will find more detailed information on each of the points we have seen in this tutorial on the user interface. Thank you for watching.